Welcome back to the Secret Classroom, ladies and gentlemen. I am Eli Martyr. Thank you very much for joining me today here on the, FreeMelon Society. Today we are going to be talking about the difference between digestion and fermentation. Sometimes fermentation is conflated with digestion, and there are some schools of thought that assume that a certain amount of fermentation is good and healthy and necessary in the body. We are going to go through that and clarify a little bit of that. These are in fact two different processes. One results in health, the other results in non-health. Okay, let's just go right off the bat and state this from the beginning. You do not want fermentation to occur in your body. You want to minimize fermentation as much as possible, and you want to maximize digestion. Fermentation bad, digestion good. Okay, let's just get that out in the open. Now, what has happened in society over the years is there has been a normalization of inhuman and inhumane dietary practices. This will not be a shock to the regular FreeMelons attending this class, but for people that are newer, yeah, this might be a surprise, but most everything that we are taught to believe is good and true with regards to our eating behaviors is in fact not true and does not really lead you to the best and optimal state of health that we could potentially reap from ourselves and our bodies. And of course, to reiterate, normal does not necessarily indicate natural. Okay, what is natural is not necessarily normal.
Her Saudi husband blew himself up in a suicide attack.
When it comes to clothes, if she's not wearing the abaya or she's wearing high heels, then it's the standard 40 lashes. What upset me most was lashing old women when they weren't wearing the proper clothes.
Normal for a cult of some sort might be to cut your wrists, pee on yourself, defecate on each other's heads, and then squawk like chickens until the sun comes up, right? That could be a normal behavior for some sort of strange cult. But, is that a natural thing? Well, no, not necessarily, right? Now, I'm using an extreme example, but you'd be surprised these extremities are basically a worldwide phenomenon right now of ridiculous behaviors often that are completely normal. And the normalization just comes from culture and repetition. Culture and repetition from the time you're a child, indefinitely. Truth and non-truth are exclusive to one another. It doesn't matter how many people believe something that is not true. It will never make it true, regardless of if that number swells to 1 million, 2 billion, 800 billion, 65 billion trillion. Doesn't matter how many people believe something that's not true. If it's not true, it's just not true. So if we're going to make heads or tails about this digestion versus fermentation thing, we should probably define some terms for you. So let's define fermentation first. Fermentation is the process by which food is taken into the body and is worked upon by bacteria, yeasts, and fungus, producing alcohol, acids, and other waste products that are of no use to the body. Okay, so when we talk about fermentation in this video, and probably in other videos on this channel, that's what I mean by fermentation, okay, as it relates to fermentation in the human body, okay? Well, let's talk about digestion. What is digestion? Digestion is the process by which food is taken into the body and is worked upon by enzymatical action, producing further simplified food elements that may be absorbed into the body and converted into living tissue. So in digestion, when food is taken into the body, it's not worked on by bacteria and yeasts and agents of decay in nature. It's worked upon by the very enzymes in your body. And when the food material is worked on by enzymes, living enzymes in your body, what you get is you get the proper breakdown of those food materials into usable elements that are taken up by the blood and are able to be converted into the living tissue, rather than converted into waste products and acids, such as when bacteria and yeasts and funguses break down those foods instead, okay? And since I like to fantasize that I've crowned myself the king of simplicity, let's simplify this, just brutally simplify this. Food entering your body has two options. Option one, it can either ferment, meaning that the food can go into your body, bacteria, yeasts, and funguses can eat the food, okay? Or option two, your own enzymes can attack the food and digest it properly for your own body. Okay? Two possible options for food entering the body. One by bacteria, yeasts, and fungus. The other by enzymes in your body, digestive enzymes that are part of your body. Now, in so saying, that leads us to our obvious follow-up question. Well, how do you prevent fermentation happening, right? Why is it that you would eat something and it would ferment in your system instead of digest? Okay? Well, as we've stated in other videos and other lectures, food ferments in the body when we eat foods in some of the following manners. You eat the wrong foods, okay? So you eat foods that you're never supposed to eat as a human being. You eat just the wrong type of food for your biology. That's one way that food will ferment in your system. Another way that food will ferment in your system is if you eat the wrong combination of foods, okay? You eat foods that are enzymatically incompatible with one another, and because they require different digestive substrate environments to digest in, they clash with each other and they can't digest properly and they ferment. Okay. Another way food ferments is if you eat food under undesirable or unsuitable conditions. So meaning if you eat when you are tired. So if you just wake up at 2 a.m. and you're groggy and tired, but for some reason you decide to stuff a carcass burger down your throat, well, then that food's not digesting properly at all. Your body is in a state of rest. You're sleepy. It's just, you don't have the digestive energy to be breaking down food. Okay. So unsuitable conditions. If you're stressed, if you eat when you're stressed, you guarantee indigestion and fermentation. So in suitable conditions, you'll ferment your food instead of digest it. Now, as for the macronutrients involved in fermentation, carbohydrates and proteins are the macronutrients that are mostly responsible for fermentation, meaning that the digestive bacteria, the bacteria and yeasts and funguses will attack carbohydrates primarily, and they'll also attack proteins for the most part when it comes to fermentation. When you eat sugars, for example, or starches, and they ferment, okay? So let's just assume you've eaten a starch and you've eaten it in a wrong combination at the wrong time, or it's the wrong thing to eat, period. Okay? When sugars ferment, they're broken down into carbohydrate, acetic acids, and alcohol. In particular, alcohol is a poison. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. Alcohol is a poison. Doesn't matter how little amount of this poison you put into your body. It's still a goddamn poison. Okay, so you red wine drinkers who think you're healthy because you're drinking red wine, a little bit of it. I don't know where you're getting this from. Yeah, alcohol is a poison. It's a vicious poison. It destroys cells. It kills cells. All acids that you produce in your body are waste products that must be eliminated. If they stay in the body, you die. It's as simple as that. Now, on the other hand, what happens when you digest sugars or starches, okay? So you've decided to eat unlike most normal people out there, and thus you are eating properly, and now you're actually going to digest the sugar that you put into your mouth, okay? So what happens when you digest sugar? Well, the sugars break down into simpler monosaccharides, if there were starches to begin with. So first they break down into simple monosaccharides, and then they break down even further, and then they're taken up by the body. Waste products might involve simple cellulose or even just water as byproducts. So simple byproducts that you just excrete, no poisoning, no nothing. So assuming you've eaten a starch, you eat the starch, the ptyalin in your mouth, an enzyme that breaks down sugars. This ptyalin will break down that starch into maltose, another simpler type of sugar. That maltose sugar will then go down into your digestive system. When it reaches your intestine, you have maltase, which is another enzyme which will break down the maltose into an even simpler sugar, dextrose, and on it goes. Now the dextrose, a much finer, simpler sugar, is in your small intestine, and now that can be taken up into the blood, and hunky-dory, everything's great. I'm not spending too much time on the technical stuff because, as I always say, it's really not super important to know that. We need to understand the fundamentals. And fundamentally speaking, if you digest your sugars and starches, they break down into smaller and smaller and smaller itty-bitty pieces, right? And then the body takes them up into the blood and they are used with minimal byproducts and byproducts that are not toxic to the body. If you decide to eat like an idiot, then you will ferment your starches and sugars, and all of those starches and sugars will break down into poison, literally poison. And, well, if poison's in your body, poison's in your body. So you've poisoned yourself, and that's not good, okay? It's the same story with protein. Let's say you want to eat some protein, and today you decide, by golly, I don't feel like eating protein like an idiot today. I feel like I actually want to digest my protein, okay? So what happens when you eat protein and you actually digest it? What happens is the protein gets into the stomach. Your stomach will release pepsin, which is responsible for breaking down proteins into polypeptides and peptides. So basically smaller elements of proteins. Those polypeptides and peptides will go further down the digestive system into the intestine, where in the intestine, other enzymes that you secrete, in this case aripepsin, will break down those polypeptides into amino acids. And now these amino acids are elements that you can use, and you take them up into your blood, minimal waste products, and, everything's great. You are not poisoned, you've digested your proteins, and your system is happy, and you are happy. But it's possible that you might not want that to happen. You might decide one day that you want to eat protein like an idiot. So instead of digesting your food, you've decided that I'm going to eat my proteins in unideal conditions, and I'm going to guarantee that they putrefy in my system. So when proteins putrefy, or ferment, right? Same type of thing. When proteins putrefy in the system as opposed to digest, what happens is they break down into toxic substances like tolmeins and other acids and chemicals and whatnot that are the byproducts of bacterial decomposition of protein. Tolmeins are just the name for the spectrum of toxic chemicals that are produced by the breakdown of organic tissue by bacteria. Again, just like we were talking about sugar above, these toxic chemicals, these toxic substances, and carbonic acids and uric acids and whatever. These byproducts by bacterial and yeast fermentation, so basically when the bacteria are digesting, their poo, bacterial poo, and yeast poo. Those are the byproducts of fermentation. When your proteins are putrefying instead of digesting, you are flooding your system and tissues with these waste products, and they have to be eliminated. The longer you eat in a way that causes fermentation in the body, and the longer these acids reside in the tissues, the more chance that you're going to get sick, end up with a disease or illness or chronic condition or whatever. It's just over time, the longer you damage yourself, well, then you can't be surprised and you can't complain when you end up getting sick in the future, because you've done it to yourself through diet. Now, sometimes you might not know you're doing it to yourself, but again, as I always say, nature does not care. Natural law doesn't care, right? Truth doesn't care. The truth that you're poisoning yourself is you're poisoning yourself. Whether you want to believe that you're being healthy or not, that's your battle to fight. There's lots more to learn about fermentation. If you want the actual technical, scientific terminology and whatnot, you can find that anywhere, okay? And I don't want to waste your time by doing that again for you in this video. I just given you the basics in an easy way so that it's really hard for you to forget them if you actually watch this video to the end. So, chances are if you've gotten to this point in the video, you might not really forget this lesson, and that's what I hope. Fermentation is the process of death in action, okay? If there's anything that you remember from this, just remember this. Fermentation is the process of death in action. When things are in the last moments of life, when they're breaking down, when they're degrading, when they're deteriorating, when they're putrefying, when they're becoming less and less, right? When they're ready to go back into the earth to be recycled for something new, right? That death process, that is what fermentation is. And I'm going to make a subsequent follow-up video to this to explain once and for all how stupid it is to be eating fermented products and fermented foods in the diet. Despite all the people that want to say, oh, but we did it for so many years, in our past. Our ancient ancestors used to ferment foods all the time. Yeah, well, some of our ancient religious ancestors used to bathe the tops of the heads in human semen too. We don't think that's such a great idea anymore, do we? But they did it in the past, so it must be a good idea now, right? Just because you did it in the past doesn't mean... okay, anyway, I'm not going to get into that now. But anyway, I'll do a video later on how silly an idea it is to think that fermented foods are something that is good for you. It's not. It's a bad idea. So to wrap it up, by eating and living like a fool, you invite the death process to occur in your body. And when you invite the death process to occur in your body, well, death will start to become you in physical manifestation. Much better to invite the essence of life to be you and to take part in your system, to eat living foods and to eat healthy foods and eat foods that are meant for your system, and allow life to express itself in your body and in your mind and in your emotion and in your spirit. If you guys out there are still eating in a way that invites the death process to occur inside of you, I would highly encourage you, stop it. Stop this behavior. Do everything that you can to eat properly, eat like a natural human being. Eat only raw foods that are suitable for your system that you can tolerate. Fresh fruits, some vegetables, the vegetables that you can tolerate in their natural state, nuts and seeds. These are human foods for you, okay? That's it for now, guys. Thank you so much for listening to me here in the secret classroom on the FreeMelon Society. Subscribe to the FreeMelon Society if you are not a subscriber already. There's always important things that I would love to talk to you about, important videos and lectures that are going to be coming up in the future. So subscribe now so you don't miss any of those. Hit the bell notification so that you'll get a nice alert when I do upload new videos. And share this for people that might need it. There's a lot of confusion in dietetics today, or dietetics, I don't know what the right word is. So yeah, anyway, I hope this helped, guys, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.